Okay, so we're going to be reviewing the Protestant Reformation now. So this is the section on page 19 of the review guide. See you later. So, the Protestant Reformation, a key thing that you want to remember is that question there, what were the political, social, and economic reasons that people embraced religious change? This is not just about religious issues. There's the political issues as well. And there's the social issues as well, right? The Peasant Rebellion shows that for some people, they're embracing these religious changes as a way of bringing about societal change, or what they hope to be societal change. So even though in reality the Protestant Reformation has profound religious effects and has profound effects on politics, it does not bring about those social changes. But that doesn't mean the desire for social change is not actually a cause of the Reformation. And then we need to focus on what the effects are. And so really the reason why all this stuff is important is thinking about what's causing it and how it's affecting other things. So that's very key. So Wycliffe and Huss, these first two, we talked about them before. Both of them predate the Protestant Reformation. And both of them are calling for reforms in the church. Wycliffe argues that the church is not necessary for salvation. Wycliffe argues that the church, that instead individuals need to pray, individuals need to learn, Christian beliefs and act like Christians, but that they don't necessarily need to follow, do church practices. They don't necessarily need to fast and do, attend certain things. And so both of them are early reformers, but they don't spark the Reformation. And another set of early reformers was in the Northern Renaissance, as Christian humanists, like Erasmus. Erasmus remains a Catholic even when the Protestant Reformation breaks out, but he wants to see reform in the church. Erasmus argues that, people need to learn the philosophy of Christ. They need to follow, they need to read Scripture. They need to learn what Christ did and what Christ says. And they need to pray, but that they don't necessarily need to learn church doctrine and follow strictly every church practice. Martin Luther then is the beginning, or obviously sets off the Protestant Reformation, right? But obviously we've got these people that predate Luther. And Luther, if you remember, is an interesting individual who thinks that he can't understand how he is saved, right? He has this dilemma about individuals. He knows he's a sinful man, and so he thinks he's not saved. And so reading the Bible, he comes across a line that says, the just shall live by faith. The just shall live by faith. In other words, those that are going to be justified, those that will reach salvation, they will know that because of their faith. They will live that because of their faith. And so Luther articulates his idea that, salvation happens because of one's faith. And this is the idea, this doctrine is known as justification by faith. Now, at this time, the sale of indulgences has increased. There's all sorts of other factors, right? There's corruption within the church. There's the selling of church positions. There's the, high fees for burials and funeral services. There's priests that are hearing confessions that are then cavorting around with women and doing all sorts of bad things. And there is the sale of indulgences across Europe. And this practice has become more and more widespread because it's very convenient. If you tell someone that, hey, you're not going, or, your aunt who died is in purgatory, and if you buy this indulgence, she'll get into heaven sooner. Or you, when you die, you'll get into heaven sooner if you buy this indulgence. So it's, it's a good fundraising technique. And all sorts of interesting things, if you pay this much, you'll get this much time off of purgatory and things like that. So Johann Tetzel is a friar selling indulgences across Germany. And Luther objects to this, because for Luther, salvation comes from faith, not through any action. And so salvation comes from faith, and therefore Tetzel is lying when he says that the indulgence will guarantee less time in purgatory. And Luther writes his 95 Theses condemning the sale of purgatory, the sale of indulgences, and calling for the church to stop their sale, and saying that indulgences are a fraud, and that it's through people's faith and not through their actions that they reach heaven. Yes, question.
Was Tetzel the one who was selling indulgences so that they could build?
Yes, the sale of indulgences was for the construction of a new Renaissance cathedral, St. Peter's Basilica. So if you want a direct connection between the Renaissance and the Reformation, usually most historians make the connection based on thought, right? The Renaissance inspired new thinking. The Renaissance inspired individuals to look at sources and to reinterpret sources and to relearn things and to think critically about things. Therefore, the Renaissance inspired these new ideas about how things should be thought, and therefore people began to challenge traditional church teaching. So often that's the connection, but you can make the connection that the Renaissance caused the Reformation because the Renaissance was spending too much on art, and they were selling indulgences to construct those beautiful artistic pieces, masterpieces. Okay. So now Luther's beliefs. Luther is rejected, right? The Pope rejects what he's saying. He says, Luther, you're wrong, and you need to shut up. So Luther, of course, thinks, well, I'm not wrong, so therefore the Pope is wrong. If the Pope is wrong, then therefore he can't be the final arbiter. He can't be the final say. He can't have the final say in what Christian truth is, because he's wrong. And then Luther says, well, then who has the final say in what Christian truth is? Luther also eliminates church councils, because church councils can be wrong too in Luther's mind, because the Council of Constance had killed John Huss. And John Huss was advocating things very similar to Martin Luther. And so if Luther's right, and Huss was saying things similar to Luther, and the council killed Huss, then therefore the council was wrong, just like the Pope is wrong. Therefore the council cannot be the final say, cannot have final say in what Christian truth is. In other words, there is no authority on earth that has the final say in Christian truth. Therefore, Christians need to read Scripture for themselves in order to understand Christian truth. And so Luther says, sola scriptura, only Scripture. That's the only source of Christian faith. The church practices that exist outside of Scripture are these rituals that have been made up and that therefore are not part of the faith. And we know the church is wrong, according to Luther's mind, because the Pope's wrong, these church councils are wrong, so the church can obviously be wrong. So it's something that's not found in the Bible, that's not found in Scripture, we can throw out. So Luther throws out sacraments, and he reduces the number of sacraments from 7 to 2. Those 2 sacraments, baptism, which is in the Bible, and some communion. But Luther redefines communion. He rejects the transubstantiation model, that the bread and wine becomes the physical body and blood of Christ, and he replaces this with a new theology known as the real presence, which suggests that the bread and wine doesn't physically become the body and blood of Christ, but instead Christ is mystically present in the bread and the body. So it's not physically changed, but it's mystically changed into Christ.